Awesome. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm Debra Eckerling, creator of the Deb Method for Goal Setting Simplified and author of your Goal Guide and 52 Secrets for Goal Setting and Goal Getting. You can't reach your goals on your own. You need your people. So every week I bring together some of my people to dive into the topic. And of all things, it's the beginning of November. We're talking about stress and relationships. Raise your hand if stress is in the forefront of your mind and if you want it not to be. So I've got a wonderful, wonderful panel today. I have my friend Angela Miller Barton. Great to see you, Miss WellCoaches Extraordinaire. Kim Groshek, who is a friend from Innovation Women World, and Terri Ann Heiman. I'm trying to remember which networking group I met you through, but you've been on before. I wrote about you for Women's World and all about you embracing, I guess, the spiritual is what we talked about and how that changed your life. And I think when we talk about things like stress, and in the case of today's stress and relationships, and, how do you shake off when the world has other plans for you and your focus? So it's going to be a wonderful conversation. And before we go further, you may be watching this as Gold Chat Live or watching the replay or listening to us as the Gold Chat podcast on the Marketing Podcast Network. But no matter how you found us, we are glad you're here and choosing less stress, because it's not always a choice, but I think sometimes it is indeed. Friends, please share who you are and why you're here, and then we will jump into more of the conversation. Angela, welcome. Great to see you.
Good to see you. So I'm Angela Miller Barton. I'm program coordinator for WellCoaches membership. And I'm here because I'm a wellness coach and a yoga teacher. And also because, Deb, I just enjoy hanging out with you also to talk about stress. This is, as you mentioned, it's the beginning of November. We're headed into what people call hurricane season, not the obvious hurricane season. And to talk, I borrowed that from someone that's not mine. And to talk about how we can get through it maybe a little bit smoother.
Life gives you enough hiccups and hurdles. I feel like we have to do whatever it is we can to counteract them as much as possible. And I feel like this conversation about stress is so important because, well, for all the obvious reasons, we'll talk about that more. So wonderful to see you, Kim. Great to have you here.
Well, thanks for having me. This is awesome. I really love panel discussions. As you noticed by my name here, I'm the original Pause Lady. I've been in the industry for over 35 years, transforming large-scale, $30 billion industry corporations. And now I'm actually helping people to practice pausing so they get more mindful in their lives and get reconnected to themselves.
Because if you're not mindful and you're not connected, all hell could very easily break loose, right? That's when things start to spin out.
That's so true. Yeah, I mean, I really, oh, okay, sorry. I was going to say, I love that. So with everyone always on, the whole thing here is so that all the hell breaks loose doesn't break loose anymore. So that we can actually just take that moment, right, and really just reconnect with ourselves. Because here's the thing, we don't. So we need to.
And there's so many things we have no control over, but realizing that there are certain things that we can, I think really is going to help. And we'll chat about that. Terri Ann, great to see you. Welcome.
Welcome. Deb, we did meet in Innovation Women as well. Kim as well. Yes, what a great group.
Ooh.
Yeah, Friday mornings. Coffee time. I'm an hour behind everybody. Well, y'all are West Coast, but yeah, what a great group. But yeah, thank you for having me. I am a spiritual mentor, meaning I help people set up a spiritual practice and learn to embody the whole idea of what mindfulness is. Not just talk about it or read about it, but actually practice together using the breath. And as Kim says, coming into that pause. How does that feel like? But when we can actually learn the tools, they're fun, they're amusing, and it allows us to get out of the mind and drop into the heart. And talking about stress release, I really believe that being in our heart right now, especially as we move through these next couple of days, can help us to really find that authentic part of us that helps us to slow down and feel the presence of how we want to show up and not with all that stress. So that is how I help women. I help them through their intuition, really trusting their confidence and building, again, that practice on a daily basis. And my goal this year has been to bridge spirituality into business. Very important that we show up with our soul. We don't just leave it on our meditation cushion or at the yoga studio, but that we show up complete and whole. So thank you for having me.
That is, the more we that we are, the more us that we are, the better we can have a positive impact on the world. And I had a technical difficulty. I believe when Angela introduced herself, it was actually Kim and the highlight, because that is the day that I'm having. So I just wanted to highlight you one more time, Angela. The other thing that you did not mention that you do is that you are a writer. And that is another part of the balance, I think, that it helps as a stress relief. Would you say?
Absolutely. I'm a daily journaler. I start the day with that. It's a really way to, it's a way to relieve stress, but also for me, I'm a verbal processor, and not everybody needs to hear all of that. And so it's a way to work it through, because it's how I think a lot of people make sense of the world, either by writing it out or reading what other people write. It's how we find a way to hold on to something, find our anchor, find our grounding, and be like, this is how I'm moving forward.
Well, as you know, and as people who read your goal guide, a roadmap for setting, planning, and achieving your goals, know that I'm all about the journaling, because when you get things out of your head and onto the page, you can deal with them. When you try and rearrange things in your head, it is not so successful.
No.
Those who are listening, people are nodding. You're just going to have to trust me on this one. I feel like it's silly to ask what stress is, but I'm going to anyway, because we're talking about stress. So what is your definition, and what is the impact it can have on relationships? Kim, shall we take a pause?
Sure.
And let you jump in on this one?
Yeah, so I want to tell you a little story. So I actually I'm a transition coach, and I help executives transition up level or transition out into retirement, or maybe they're an empty nest. And I transition myself, because usually we work with people that, what we learn is what we teach. And I didn't realize, so when you're in corporate, you put a big shell around you and you cover up your emotions. And I've learned that for 35 years, how to do that really, really well. I was taught not to cry. I was taught to hold everything in, or if I did, I'm an athlete. I ran 50 half marathons in 50 states, because that's how it was my outlet. I write as well, and that every day, 15 minutes a day, just to get my thoughts on paper, because I can't really always articulate that. And sometimes when I do, there's repercussions to doing that, especially in the corporate world. And when I took a break from the corporate world, I taught yoga for 2 years. So I actually learned about the mindfulness, even though I've been practicing that for over 15 years, because again, that's another outlet. Every morning I get up and I'd go at 5 a.m. before I did anything. Then I went running and did all my outlets, right, to help me manage, compartmentalize the stress. So I knew it didn't stay in my body. But when I actually transitioned into this entrepreneur world for the last year, where I'm really teaching executives what was in my mind, what they hired me for, so that they could actually take it and run with it and have those tools that I have, I experienced taking the armor off piece by piece. And I had all of these experts that helped me, different experts. I had a clearing expert. I had muscle release. I'm a cognitive scientist by trade and a computer scientist. So, in cognitive science, you actually have, how you are and how you behave is how your brain it's like little highways. Same thing as your muscles. So I had some of that tended to as well, because I didn't realize that I was creating, highways in my muscles, stress highways. And as I was going through that experience, I started to become more aware of the stress that, like the triggers, the several triggers that actually cause stress, or even what did trigger me. I realized that I was getting angry when I would actually bottle up that anger. So stress itself is really being reacting to something something that maybe you don't react to well, or don't want to react, or it's a negative reaction, right, to something. And it's several triggers that happen that actually cause the stress in your body and make you sick. I know that's not a scientific definition, but that's actually what I learned practically this last year, and I was very aware of.
And you got to the answer, which is stress is a negative reaction to something. And so let me get all of your definitions, air quotes, of stress, and then we'll go back to the way that it can impact relationship, because obviously that is why we're here. Terri Ann, what is your definition of stress?
Yeah, I totally agree with what Kim's saying. And it can also be defined as like a state of worry or mental tension that's really created by a disruption in the energy system, or you can look at it as a difficult situation. So something that you're going along and all of a sudden it's like, oh, right. And then you start to do this mental thing, this mental chatter, and then it starts to build, and then it starts to build. And one of the things I've noticed is a lot of people think, oh, it's just stress. Let me go run more, or let me go eat better, and we'll get rid of it. But that's not really how the energy system works. It builds up and builds up and builds up, and then like attracts like. So we keep pulling it in. So for me, it's the breath. I love to journal. Sometimes I fight with myself. Do I want to go meditate or write first, right? But really, it's that breath, and really using the breath to process. I have a huge emotional body, and all my life, my mother would say, quit being so sensitive, quit your crying. But really, and as I've been discovering and been talking to all my guests on my podcast, these last series I've been doing, we have to process our emotional energies, those traumas, in order to be able to lift up and out of it. So it is that disruption through the energy system is really how I see it and work with it.
Got it. And Angela?
Well, I agree with what everybody already said. I would just add that, stress is also exercise. Stress is also lots of the things that we do to offload our emotional, baggage, so to speak. And so as someone who's a runner, sometimes, like, as you both mentioned, we can sort of take those things too far. But back to the point of stress is really when I feel like what's being demanded of me is more than I believe that my resources are, whether that's internal resources, external resources, that may or may not be actually objectively true. But in the moment, I am activated because I don't believe that I can meet whatever demand is upon me, whether that's work or emotions or what have you. And of course, I agree with what everybody else said as well.
It sounds to me, and I don't want to spoil the book, but you are one of the 60 achievers that I interviewed for 52 Secret. I know the numbers are different, but bonus tips. But you are one of the achievers in 52 Secrets for Goal Setting and Goal Getting. And that's really the essence of your tip, is that you need to listen to you and be honest with yourself, right?
Yes. I don't want to spoil the surprise, but yes, it's being able to be honest with yourself about, am I up to the task? And if you are, great, we still need help. And if you're not, also knowing when to bring people in, or in the example that, obviously you and I discussed before, is knowing when to say, I'm out. I need to step aside. This isn't for me. And sometimes that's the best stress reliever. We don't always have the option to, be taken out of the game, so to speak. But when we can, sometimes that is the most loving thing we can do for ourselves and also for other people.
The main, I'd say, impetus behind a lot of what I do It's your life, it's your choice. So when you are confronted with change, whether it's by choice or by circumstance, the way that you react to it is really a decision by whether you're going to thrive or crash and burn. Yeah, I know we're a lighthearted show, but I really can't think of a better way to put it that way. It's when you embrace the things that you have no control over, I think it helps you move through them. When you run, you cower. When you let it be that roadblock, then it's only going to make things more difficult. And let's go into that relationship piece, though, because I believe that relationships can make things better, but they can also make things a lot worse. So, Angela, where do you feel like that relationship piece fits in the stress conversation?
Well, definitely. It was, as I mentioned before we started today, I just recently moved. And while it was something that I chose, even when you choose something, doesn't mean it doesn't come with, all kinds of things. And relationships, are complicated in that some people in the midst of stress are like meditation, Prozac in human form. They show up and you feel good and like it all just drains from your body. And those people, of course, you want to keep super close. And then there are other people, it's not their fault. It's just that there's something about them or the things that they bring, they activate you. They activate your old things or new things. And so it's learning how to really recognize, in a lot of ways, this is not dismissing other people's bad behavior, but also, what is it about me that's getting so activated in this relationship? Assuming that someone's just doing something that's a little bit irritating or what have you. Why am I so bothered by this? And I think that's one of the great things about when we talk about stress is when I can bring it back to me, there's a lot of power. I can't change other people. I can't make them want to be different. But when I ask myself, and I have to ask myself this a lot, what is it about the situation that I'm feeling, so bothered by, whether it's, interpersonal relationships, coworkers, friendships, family members, what have you. And I think as we move into the holidays, being able to bring it back to us, how do I find, as Kim was mentioning, taking a pause and not immediately jumping into a reaction, it can bring the stress down so dramatically. And so I think that we have to, look at our holiday bingo card and be like, who are the people that I need to spend a little more time with? And also, who are the people that I may need to spend time with? But also, I need a little bit of a buffer for me to love them and me at the same time.
I think there are a lot of people nodding as you just said that, because it's true. Some people help you be your best self, and some people are the complete opposite. And when you can recognize which is which, especially the latter, then you could put things in place so that sort of stress impacts you less.
Yeah.
Terri
And
Ann?
recognizing that we're that way for other people. Like, it's not that I think, oh, I'm a delight for all people. I have to
I am a delight for all people.
I have to recognize that in some situations, I'm sure I'm unwittingly activating other people, and to look at other people's reactions at times. And I don't need to manage their own emotions, but also be like, ooh, am I showing up too strong? Am I showing up to something? And can I, especially in holiday situations, what have you, how can I, adjust my dial a little bit and take some ownership of that as well?
So in knowing yourself, you're better able to navigate interpersonal relationships during the holidays, but really at any time.
Anytime. Yeah.
Terri Ann, want to jump in on this?
Yeah, you have so many great points, Angela. I so agree. But I do think, well, for me, I have a lot of fire. That's just how my charts are. A lot of fire. I've got this Scorpio rising energy. And I know I can sometimes have a bit of sting, but it's my passion that wants to come through. So sometimes I have to kind of come back to me like, okay, Tara, let's pull it back a little bit, take a breath, and just kind of tune in. But the thing that I've noticed for me recently, especially with what we're going through here in the United States, right? It's like having the ability to let everybody have their opinion and to like really kind of remove the judgment out, whether it's the political scene or whether it's the family scene as the holidays, like you say, are coming up, but really be able to have empathy in a good manner, not empathy that I have to take it on, but empathy like, okay, she is feeling this, so let me understand that. And if I can have those feelings come into me to understand, I think that's going to help and open up to not to have so much of that. "Urgh." And I've been there these last couple of weeks. I've been there, really passionate with my family and my nieces and just like talking about what's going on and then just like going, I don't get it. But okay, take a breath and recognize everybody's entitled to the way in which they want to show up and the opinions that they have. But if I can come back into my heart and just kind of breathe it through and allow everybody to be who they are, I think that's part of it, right? And relationships will push on us. They will. And that is our fastest growth, right? It really is. Yeah. So I think coming back into my heart and recognizing that I can have empathy for everybody, compassion, sympathy, yeah, too, both, all, and knowing the difference as well. Yeah.
And for a show that prides itself on being apolitical and kumbaya and all that, I guess I did or did not pick the perfect day for this kind of conversation. Him, what's your take on the relationship piece and the stress factor?
So first of all, I'm going to say yes and to all of yours plus. So I actually use systems. I'm really good at that. So one of the things that I do is I embrace the mess. And that means that the mess is always going to be there. It's always going to come at us. And what I do is I put systematic approaches in place. I have taught my daughter this. In fact, I just spent the day with her. We do ballet together 6 times a year. And she's 39 years old and an up and coming VP. She's a senior director for the Marie Osmond's organization, the Children's Miracle Network, the National Children's Miracle Network.
Nice.
And in it, she, and I'm bringing her up because I taught her a lot of these methods, which is the time box. And I say this, it's a methodology. It's more of a cube approach rather than a scheduling this stuff on your calendar and get a task done. And what it is you put boundaries around things so that if people are who they are, you can accept that. Like we even say, you do you. Understanding that you are who you are and you experience what you experience. And then having that understanding and the boundaries around that, you can actually live in the mess, if we want to call it that. It comes around you, but you can actually live in a safe space. And then the third thing, because I was living threes, right? 3 golden nuggets each time I talk, right? The other thing is actually, being aware and using the methods around maybe if you are seeing you get triggered and get angry because someone said something to you that maybe didn't land in your space very well, you can actually use anger no more methodology, which is an objective point of view, seeing that person's point of view, seeing your point of view, and then asking the question, who did wrong and was that person really trying to do that to you? Understanding it. There's actually a method, a rhyme to that method. It's Dr. Orman's method. And I've been taught that and I teach other people. So my husband and I have been married for 39 years. And this is how we have approached things. We aren't always the same. He likes to hunt and fish. I don't hunt and fish. I like to go out and travel. I like to go running. He kind of runs with me sometimes, but he doesn't, that's not his thing. But there's things we do together and things we don't. And we're going to always experience different things and have different points of view. And we just learn, we talk, we articulate, right? We explain, where we're coming from, having that open communication. I think that's really important.
I feel like the overarching answer to the how relationships impact stress is we don't live in this world alone. So obviously the people with whom we interact are going to have some influence. And the answer is in the way in which we react to things that we don't necessarily agree with. So did I synopsize everybody?
Perfect.
What is your favorite? And journaling has been mentioned, and walking and running. I mean, I respect the running. I dance for exercise because, it is my thing, I guess. And the whole running thing, while it's great in theory, is just so non-Deb. But what is your favorite form of stress release that we can say on a family show?
I can say that what I do in the moment, it's not something, I mean, yes, I do yoga, and yes, I meditate and do prayer and do all those things that you do that are the bigger. But when there is a time in the moment when stress comes at my way, I stop, pause, and I actually do take a long breath and give that space to kind of just let things be. I really do. I take several breaths, and that really calms me down.
I love that. Okay, Angela, you laughed hardest, so you get to go next.
Well, I am with Kim. I mean, in the moment, taking a breath will save you every time. It will save you from saying things you might mean but wish you'd said differently, and just get a handle on yourself. But my probably this time of year, my favorite thing is to bake, because at the end you have something really lovely to share with someone else, and it reminds you that, like you mentioned before, like we're all really in this together, as what is it, Ram Dass says, we're all walking each other home, that you have something to share with someone, and especially if you're in conflict or just just a little bit of friction, that can really smooth things over. Or like I mentioned, I've moved. It's a great way to meet neighbors.
Are you like baking everybody happy? Is that it?
I'm baking people happy, and it's also, I think, just a really nice way to share with other people something that took your time. And time is really precious. I mean, we don't, we're all often looking for more time. And so I took the time to do this thing, but I find it relaxing. Maybe it's because my mom owned a bakery for many years. And so the sound of a mixer is really quite soothing to me. I find it really comforting. And so that's my sort of guilty pleasure / great stress reliever. And running hills, but I know we already talked about exercise.
And the baking thing, and as a former non-cook who basically lives by making soup. I mean, for me, it's you put ingredients in the Instant Pot and then you could do other things and then you're rewarded with a meal. And that aroma, I mean, you could talk about aromatherapy all you want, but I don't think anything beats the smell of chicken soup. Or maybe baked goods, depending on the baked goods.
Cinnamon, I really love.
So I like the baking answer. Terri Ann?
Yeah, I agree with you, Angela, about making things. I make jewelry, so I like to give people things that I make. So I definitely agree. But I'm going to go a little different on this answer and talk about Reiki. Reiki energy. It's one of the easiest natural systems of healing that every single person can use and learn. And in minutes, seconds, it can just totally change the whole environment, not only for yourself, but everyone around you. So if you don't know what Reiki is, it is a natural system of healing. It helps you learn how to work with the emotional, mental, physical, and spiritual layers of the body. And so it is something that I'm very empowered to teach you to have, not just come to me for a session, but it has changed my life. And Deb wrote an article all about it, about how it really did save my life. And so I still am very big on allowing that to happen. And it just is so simple. Once you learn, you just go like this. And you just sit there and everything can shift and change for you in a matter of seconds. So yeah, you can always reach out if you don't know what it is, but it's something that I think everybody can learn and work with. It really does. It doesn't require any special beliefs or faith or anything like that. It's a natural system of healing, considered energy medicine by the NIH, National Institute of Health. Yeah.
And that's what the Women's World article I wrote on you was about, was that how Reiki saved your life.
Yeah.
And
really at a very stressful time.
At a very stressful
Divorce,
time.
2 small children, cheating husband. I was living in New York all on my own. I just started my jewelry business, and it totally, nothing else was working. It totally saved my life. It really did. To the point of which now it's my purpose. It is my life purpose, my life work. Yeah.
Which is, I mean, it's not great that you went through all that. But I often speak with people because it's okay. I went through this. You get to learn from me now. And I think that is a gift, the ability to survive, thrive, and then just share what worked for you so it can help others.
I agree.
One of my, I love the cooking. I love the dancing for exercise. I actually have a 2-minute rule whenever I am completely stressed out, and I try not to be, but I've had a little bit more than my fair share the last month or so, is I'm allowed to panic for like 2 minutes. And that's it. You know, get all of the anxiety out, and then, okay, great, onward. So that's what I found works. Even, I don't want to say even better than dancing. There are just certain situations where dancing is just not appropriate. But the point being, when you know yourself, which is what we've been talking about, you know how to stop things. You know how to yell in your head, hit the reset button, and move forward. So what about those people who don't get it yet? Who don't, I don't want to say who don't know themselves, but I am certain you've all encountered people who replace self-reflection with activity, I guess. So why? What stops people from that introspection, and what's a simple thing that they could do to really learn more about who they are? Again, I'm smiling, so I'll let you go first on this one.
Well, you know, people that I work with are basically me, and they're doers. And I think we are trained as a behavior to do, especially in the Midwest. That's where I am, and that's where I still am. And
And where I'm from, so I get it.
yeah. So, and yeah. You know, it really is explaining the difference between what they're doing. And, you know, especially they come to me to say, you know, I'm retired and I volunteer all the time, but I just really can volunteer and have no purpose. I have no feeling, no heart to it. And it's really just taking that time to, you know, write and breathe and all the stuff that I actually build into their days. I say, and I make them accountable to do that because they have to practice it, which is something they aren't used to doing because they're always doing, right? So then they're feeling really good when they actually tell me the next day or the week after that they were writing every morning and, oh my goodness, now I could write a book, or I want to write a kid's book, and I had, or all this stuff came up, or maybe, you know, I'm going to therapy now, or whatever it is, right? They're uncovering things as they're taking that break. So I think, you know, it is the risk in all of this is we are trained doers, and it's really getting that help. You know, each one of us are those coaches and experts and mentors that can help you, you know, change that behavior, modify that behavior through using these different tools that each person actually shared in their different ways and their different approaches, so that you can actually shift from where you are today, which is a doer, to where you are in being. You can be mindful, being in that moment, being in walking in the footsteps of now.
I feel like that's very much in alignment with what Terri Ann talks about with the, do you have something to add to it, or do you want to go off on your own little tangent?
No, I mean, I agree. I totally agree. And you know what? In Reiki, we talk about, there's a percept that we talk about principles, and it's just for today. And when we can think about that idea of just for today, like really, if we all think about it right now, in this very moment, we have what we need, right? I mean, we're sitting here, we're alive, we're breathing, we have what we need, but we get so far worried about the future, or we're hanging on to all those emotions of the past. And so it becomes very hard. Right. And many people choose to live in that all the time. They choose to live in their drama because they don't want to be embodied. They don't want to be here because it's painful. Right. And many people have a lot of emotional abuse, physical abuse, whatever, from childhood on. And it used to be they would teach you, oh, get over it. It happened so long ago. But that's just not true. We have to process those big emotions. We have to feel the feels. We really do, instead of stuffing them down. But when we become very present, then all of that moves away, and then we're right here aligned, and then we can respond to life from that state. And that's what's really important. But most of us aren't taught that, right? We're not taught how to work with our emotions. We're taught to, as y'all say, I've never been in the corporate world. My kids both do, but I've never been there. But we're taught not to, like, put that mask on, put the wall on, and show up and follow how everybody else is, rather than show a tear. How many people I work with, like, I cried at work today. It's like, okay, great, right? But it's so not acceptable. But yet, on the other hand, we have to be in our emotions. We have to process them, especially if we want to rise above what's going on. Number one thing is that we have to do that. So really finding the ability to, just for today, take the pause, as we've been saying, breathe into that and recognize, like, what are you struggling with? Is it present or is it past or future? But I think when we come into that present moment, we can breathe and we can slow down, and then we can kind of process what's going on and how we choose to show up.
I did a stint in corporate for many, many years, like 2000 through 2007-ish. And people always do a double take when I tell them I had that phase in my life. But it's a different animal completely, because, and even, 20 years ago is different than now. But I think the same, putting yourself in a position that is less authentic to you, where you need to be, adhere to certain rules. You don't get to make up your own, which is way more fun. But finding, if you're in that situation, finding those pockets where you can be yourself, where you can reset and bring as much of you as you can, while still coloring inside the lines, as it were. Angela, you've never been in corporate land, have you, or have you?
Somewhat. I worked at a newspaper for several years, and that's got its own little situation, but it's much more fun to be in not the corporate world, I have to say, from my own experience. It's a little bit, freer. But you're right. I think, though, corporate is its own entity. I think the world really just, when you see someone, you say, how are you doing? And they expect you to say fine. And you expect, all the things, right? And you're talking about introspection. And I think the introspection it's kind of like building a muscle, in that we have to build tolerance. Terri Ann was saying, and, Kim, we have to build tolerance to be with ourselves. Whether you consider yourself to be a big feeler, I'm a big feeler. But even if you're not, that's really why we do lots of things. It's why we do yoga. I mean, I've heard many people say the reason we do yoga is to learn how to stay in the discomfort. And it's really no different than staying in the discomfort of, grief or sadness, or even staying in, frankly, for some of us, staying in the discomfort of joy. We've heard Brene Brown and lots of other people talk about foreboding joy. Joy can be terrifying to us sometimes. If I relax, what's going to happen next? And so we have to be able to build that. And I think, mentioning like being human doings, it's that we don't hold still long enough to do that. And it really takes, I think, discipline. It's one of those things we talk about being soft skills, but these are really not soft skills. These are human skills. And very few of us get this, training in life. I mean, I certainly didn't. I had to, talking about, we have to have bad experiences so we can help other people. I had to crash and burn first, and then you slowly reach out and go, what do I not have that I need? And if we can help other people circumvent that and find it, have a much higher rock bottom, like that's great if we can do that. And so I think it's normalizing that being with ourselves can be hard. It can be uncomfortable, and that doesn't mean that we're wrong or bad. And also sometimes our emotions, we have guilt and shame about them. Like, oh, I'm jealous of that person, or, whatever we decide are bad things. And emotions just come up. They're just, as Susan David is famous for saying, it's data, not a directive. Just telling us what's going on. It's not a directive like we have to go act on it. It's, I'm angry. You mentioned being angry. Anger can be healthy. Someone is violating my boundary. That doesn't mean I lash out, but how do I take that data? What do I need to do? Do I need to reassert that boundary? So I think a lot of our stress and not having introspection and those things is, I mean, you are the original pause lady. Can I pause? I keep seeing your title. It reminds me, can we pause and sit with it and not try to make it different? And then we breathe and we use Reiki or we use whatever, and we slowly find our way through it. I mean, there is the reason that they say there's the only way out is through, because sadly it's true. But then we build that tolerance. And I think that that's when we really start to build confidence in our ability to move through stress or move through difficult times. Like you were saying, Deborah, you give yourself 2 minutes to panic because you trust that you can get to the other side.
And if you don't take the 2 minutes to panic, you're going to panic on someone else's head for way longer, right? I think it's the secret. Again, to the book, the secret to success is there is no one secret. All we can do is learn from other people and see which particular tips, tools, tactics can work. And the other common theme is we have no control over anybody except for ourselves and the way that we respond to the things that come our way, whether it's a drizzle or endless sunshine or a thunderstorm. So what are some, and this really important conversation, and before I'm going to do a different tangent before I ask my next question, when you're talking, it's reminding me about at the beginning of the pandemic, people had such a hard time not leaving the house. It was like the most foreign thing in the world to not be active. But in a lot of ways, it's the healthiest thing you can do is, well, yeah, everybody's nodding, but especially Pause Lady. But you need to be okay with yourself in order to make the best of it. I say, because your goal guide came out in January 2020, so 6 weeks before the pandemic, out came my book to help people embrace change by choice or by circumstance. 6 weeks later, we all had circumstance, but it was a good 6 months before people got, okay, life is different now. I guess I do need to change some goals or set some new goals. But for the longest time, at least I saw, people would be like, okay, great, goals are great, but I don't need to set new ones because what they originally said 2 weeks, in a couple weeks, we'll be back to normal. Guess what? We kept being the new normal and then the newer normal and then the newest normal. So I think that was, and it was a terrible time, but if you look at the gifts of the pandemic, one of them was that forced introspection. Thoughts?
I am going to say that if you noticed, even the trees and nature healed itself through that process. You could see things turning greener because things were actually dying. And because the smog wasn't in the air, right? And we actually did heal. We healed and got connected to our families more and our friends more, even though we might not have been able to see them or we were with them, right? We learned how to communicate and just even be with ourselves. And one of the things, and it's too bad that it was forced, right? Because that's the whole point, is that we can have the power to pause. We can have the power to stop and reflect and get reconnected. And there's so many people that when I try to teach with large audiences, the first question they'll ask me is, what do I do when I pause? And the second question they'll ask me is, I don't know how to pause. And then the third thing they'll say is, I don't want to be bored. And I actually do a practice right in the beginning, sharing, okay, how did that feel? See? So that was uncomfortable and you didn't even know what I was doing, right? I do that. And that, it's like, what did she do? Was that a pause in the screens and all that, right? I know that all this stuff was going through in our minds, but I had the ability to be empowered to pause. I had the ability. No one forced me to do it. And I don't even believe that we even are sitting in our boredom. And boredom is a great place to be. It's a great place to be, because that's when creativity, we are settling, and we can actually, there's things that show up for us that we can create in so many different ways and not even be active in doing it. So, I mean, I think it was a good thing, but it was sad that it had to be forced at us.
Yes, absolutely. But because it was forced, there were so many lessons and gifts that we have to look through. And
Yes.
sometimes you have to look a little bit harder than others. But the show was born out of the pandemic because you couldn't get together. So I started putting people together who didn't know each other. And this became, in a way, was like an early foreshadowing of my book that's coming out in January, bringing people together who wouldn't normally intersect to share what they know that's going to help other people. So we have to look at the challenges that come our way, pandemic and otherwise, and say, great, another lesson. And then be like, okay, let me at it. Let me have it. Right? Angela, you're nodding. Did you have something to yes and to this?
I was just agreeing with you. And Kim, you're so right, because when you paused, I was like, did we lose her? What happened? But I will agree with you.
It would have had more impact if your screen hadn't been a little glitchy earlier in the conversation. So, but yes.
But you're right about boredom. I don't remember where I read this, that boredom is so instrumental in creativity. And I find myself, especially when have block about something that I'm trying to do, I'm like, let's figure out how we can get bored. And that's just something else that we can learn to tolerate. And I think that it's just being able to like bring it down and have these moments that aren't filled, so full of something, that we can learn how to, Terri Ann mentioned earlier about being embodied. And I think it's a word that I know Terri knows what it means, obviously, but we kind of throw around, and it's an easy word to use, but it's uncomfortable sometimes. And so it sounds great and it's important and it can be amazing. And also being embodied can be one of the most courageous things that you can do. And I think that sometimes saying those things out loud, not to freak people out, but being bored is kind of twitchy. How long can I be a little twitchy today? It's like why we meditate, right? How long can I be here with myself and what I might call my veritable crazy, and get to the other side of it and be like, okay, this is how I work. This is how my mind works. Oh, there it is doing that thing again. And then you're not tricked by it quite so easily the next time and the next time and the next time. So cheers to boredom.
Yay, boredom. Terri Ann, anything to add before we gift some goals to the audience?
Sure. I have a couple of comments here, but I agree. And boredom, I very rarely find myself bored. However, I did about a year ago, about this time, I was trying to get my jewelry ready and holiday gifts and all. And I was so bored with every single thing I was making. I was so bored. And I actually do remember my teacher saying, that's a good thing, because out of boredom comes growth. Out of boredom, you'll open up to your creativity. And so I'd start something like, I don't like this and all that. And I had just the messiest art table, right? But I just kept working through it. And I just kept allowing myself to feel the boredom and that dis-ease. And I'd start something, put it down, start. And finally, out of that came some brand new creations and some jewelry and things like, oh, wow, I really love this. But I wouldn't have gotten there. I would have just been pushing the same parts around. So I do agree. Out of boredom can come creativity and can come lots of growth, but feeling that discomfort, which is kind of what I had to go through to feel that, right? And as you said, embody that discomfort. Yeah, I had to sit there and do it. The tendency would be just to shove it all away and not do it, right? Yeah. But I think that's important. But I think the other thing too that Kim happened to mention too was about the whole idea of being on Mother Earth. and how that can really just help us come back to feeling who we are, feet on the earth, being outside, feeling all the sacred elements, the wind and the earth and the water, and just like really allowing ourselves to be in that moment, because we are the sacred elements too. But when we live outside the body, which is what most people want to do, it's just easier. I mean, we can get into the psychology of it and dissociation, but that's not really what we're here to discuss, right? But it will help you to come back to feeling present with Mother Earth. Go sit on it. Go listen to the wind. What is it trying to tell us? I was noticing today, like, wow, this wind around here is stirring up. Here it comes. Like, I can feel this change coming through us all. But that's because I do want to take time to be out on Mother Earth. And that's what my teachers always tell me. It's like, I don't know what to do. Go outside. But I go outside. It's like I won't even finish the sentence, but it's just like, go outside. And COVID actually helped me recreate my entire backyard. I just moved here. My mom had passed. I just moved in this house. And I was able to really create this beautiful backyard that I want to be in. And so that was one of the things that I found. But even to this day, it's just like, okay, my 20 minutes, do your work, go take a break, go outside. Just go outside. And I think that sometimes we forget how powerful being outside can be for each and every one of us.
I feel like go outside is going to be the bonus goal, because I get a sense that everybody here is going to say it. So go outside is your homework for not even when you need it, but even better, probably when you don't need it yet, to be at one with nature and recharge. That being said, I would love for you all to gift a goal to the audience. So what is something, in addition to going outside, that people can do to deal with stress, to recenter, to fill in the blank? Angela, what goal do you want to gift?
My goal would be, Terri Ann earlier when she was talking about Reiki and putting her hands here on her heart, that the goal that I would gift is to practice compassion, but practice compassion that you can buy. I think I've said this to you before. Sometimes people think about self-compassion as being like, oh, dear sweet one. And if you can say that to yourself and it feels resonant, then of course, by all means. I'm not that person. I'm not that person yet. I'm the person who I can buy. Angela, I know you feel like you're doing terrible, but you're doing better than you imagine. I can buy that. I don't get resistance about that. You're doing okay. And so my goal would be to acknowledge that sometimes life is really hard, and it might be for the next several weeks for whatever reasons, and just pause. Really, Kim, I'm so glad you're here because I just keep saying it. And acknowledge your own suffering, even if that suffering feels small compared to other things. This is not the suffering Olympics.
It isn't? Okay, good to know.
And take that space and be like, this feels hard. And because what happens is that by extension, we're nicer to ourselves, but we have so much more compassion for each other. And I think we're going to need that. As Terri Ann alluded to earlier, as we move through the next several weeks.
So be good to you in a way that you're going to be able to accept.
Yes. Of course, striving to be able to be really, really sweet. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that, but if your baseline is you suck, sorry, you can't jump to you're amazing. You have to work up the ladder and but I can accept, you're doing okay. You're doing better than you imagine. That's way, way better than what I might have said to myself 3 years ago, right? And so be okay with being on just the second rung up on the ladder, whatever that happens to be. Yeah.
Amazing. Amazing. Terri Ann, what goal do you want to gift?
Yeah, I agree with Angela, what you're saying, but I think that it is really important that you take that moment with gratitude for all that you've done. I teach a Friday night yoga class, and that's one of the first things we do is take a moment. It's Friday. What did you accomplish this week? Give yourself that gratitude. It lifts the dopamine. It really does. It's a joy molecule, and it will bring you back into that present moment. It will. When we honor the work that we've done, whether you finished everything or not, just like, okay, I did get this done today. I did accomplish this. Gratitude for me showing up for me. Yeah. Lifts the vibration.
Well, I am all about celebrating the wins. So whether I'm working with someone individually or doing a workshop, that's the first thing I ask is, what was your win? Because when you start from a point of celebration, then you're open up the gateway. Like, oh, I did that. I can do more. And the same with gratitude, being able to celebrate whatever size win that you have, and being thankful for being able to give your gifts unto the world. So really like that. Okay, Kim, what goal are you gifting?
Yeah, I love all of that. And since this is trust and relationships, I'm going to pivot a little since I didn't really talk much about this, but it's really important. Committing to fostering a safe and open, honest communication for both people in the relationship to feel heard and valued by pausing to listen deeply and responding with empathy. You can reduce stress, enhance connection, and create foundation for mutual support. And the goal is intentionality and active listening, helping people see even the small changes in communication. It can have a big impact on relationship resilience.
For sure.
Wow. So many words that I try to encapsulate in I will have in the recap, but in essence, it's just being open and realizing, your team, whoever you're having said conversation with, and what does any team want? A win-win situation. And in stepping into a conversation with the intent for everybody to get each other, I think it is the point, right?
Yep,
Getting
exactly.
some
Very well done. I like that.
Thank you all so much. This has been, well, I think they're all important conversations, but again, with the climate and the climate of the world, it's the perfect opportunity to say, okay, I can't control a lot of things, but what I can control is the way I react, the way I respond, and the knowledge that it's important to pause, to go outside, to pat ourselves on the back, to lift us up so we can be in the best position to deal with whatever stress comes our way. Where can people learn more about all of you? Angela?
Well, you can find me at wellcoachesschool.com, but you can also find me on LinkedIn. Angela Miller Barton.
Excellent.
Easy to find.
Yes, and if you go to thedebmethod.com/blog, you will get the recap and the goals, but also the links to where you can connect with everybody on their LinkedIn as well as their websites. Kim, where can people learn more about you?
Well, you can find me on kimgroshek.com, but I have a Revitalize Summit every 2 months. It's called revitalizeglobal.com. Please come and sign up. Probably some of these experts here will be on that speaking as well, teaching you little golden nuggets on what you can do when you pause.
Love it. And this is why I love bringing people together who don't know each other. And then I get so much joy from seeing future collaborations. So thank you for that and for being here.
Thank you.
Terri Ann.
Yeah, my favorite is Instagram at Terri Ann Heiman, but also my podcast, The Empowered Spirit Show, where I talk about spirituality, bringing it into everyday life and helping you navigate. Yeah, so that's my favorite. I have some great guests coming up, and yeah, Terri Ann Heiman, all the platforms really.
Awesome. And I am at the Deb Method everywhere. And again, you can go to thedebmethod.com/blog for the recaps. I am live every Monday at 4 p.m. Pacific, and you can also subscribe to Goal Chat on your favorite podcast platform. And the YouTube channel is also at The Deb Method. And if you need a little bit of extra help on your goals, you can grab a copy of your goal guide, a roadmap for setting, planning, and achieving your goals, and watch for 52 Secrets coming out in January. Oh, I feel refreshed from this conversation. Do you all feel refreshed just from talking about de-stressing?
Awesome.
What final thought would you like to leave everybody with? Kim, final thought?
Take a pause. It's as simple as that. Just take a pause every day just for 5 minutes and just close your eyes and breathe.
Because breathing, very important.
And I'm going to tell you, there are studies that show that there are times during the day that we actually are not breathing. So,
Really?
Yes.
Okay, stop not breathing, everybody. Terri Ann?
Most people are reverse breathers too. People don't,
Yeah.
they breathe from up here and not down in their belly. Yeah.
Mhm.
I'm going to say drop out of the mind and come into the heart.
Ooh.
Nice.
And Angela, final thought?
We're all living a human life, and sometimes it feels amazing and sometimes it feels hard, and it doesn't mean you're doing something wrong always.
So in this human life, you need to have compassion for yourself and the world around you, those around you. And that will make the journey all that much better, right?
Absolutely.
Excellent. Well, thank you all so much for joining me today. Thank you for tuning in to Goal Chat, whether you're watching us live or the replay or listening to us as Goal Chat on the Marketing Podcast Network. We're so glad you're here and choosing to kind of sit with yourself and say, you know what? Stress, smash, I don't need it. I have control. And you do. You have control of the way that you live and react and breathe and pause when it's necessary. But I think it's all about taking care of yourself and then doing what it is you can to live your best, most fulfilled life. Go on out there, take a pause, breathe, be good to yourself. You got this. We know you can do it. Thanks, everyone.